Hello, y'all. I am going to jump on here and do a quick video of, this is called Tahoe Sunset, I believe. And this is coming up this week. So, let's get started. You're going to paint this on a standard size canvas at the studio, which is 12 by 16, but a standard like rectangle canvas. You're going to need your large brush, a filbert or a flat, and your small round. Paint colors are black, white, red, yellow, and ultramarine blue. I thought maybe we might use the lighter blue, but I don't think so. I think we're just going to stick to the darker blue. All right, so let's jump in here and get started. I haven't painted this in a long time. So we're going to pretty much, we're going to create our horizon line, sorry, here in the center, and then we'll work up into the sky. I'm going to make a nice light yellow with white and yellow. And I want there to be just a little bit more water versus sky. So I'm going to create my horizon line, and I'm going to fill up about 1/3 of this space with the yellow. Rinse out a little bit, and then we're going to make this pretty peach color by adding a bit of red, some white, and a little bit of that yellow. I'm going to start a little bit more to the lighter shade, so that if I want to make it darker, I can. But I'm going to start up here above my yellow. Just going to start lightly pulling that across, and then as that paint kind of starts wearing off of my brush, I'm going to start introducing it into the yellow below it. Just leaving a little bit of space at the top of the canvas for the darker shades. But what I like to do at this point is clean off my brush really well. And just use that clean brush with no paint on it to get these colors to blend together. Okay. And then once I get those nicely blended, then I'm just going to go ahead and carry on up to the top So I'm going to use some red, a tiny touch of the blue to make like a dark magenta, just a tiny bit of white just to make it a little cloudy. Bring that across the top. When you're explaining to the class how to like blend a color, I always like to let them know, like, go less is more. You don't have to pick up a huge scoop of paint because they're gonna have, it's inevitably probably gonna be the wrong color, and then they have to keep adding more colors to get, to make it the right formula. Whereas if they grab just a little bit here and there, they can gradually get to that color. So mine is looking very, very magenta, and I want it to go just a little bit deeper. So I'm gonna grab a little bit more paint here. I'm gonna grab just a tiny bit more blue this time so that I go more to a purple versus magenta. And they can play with that up here at the top of the sky. But only at the top of the sky. 'Cause if they get down into their peaches and stuff, it's not going to be good. Or their yellows. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start making everything just a bit more vibrant. So I'm going to blend up a little bit more of that pink. And I'm going to work some of that pink right in here. So we worked up, and now we're going to kind of work down. See that the vibrancy of those colors almost requires 2 coats. But they can use that pink to get a nice blend up here. Bring it down to their yellows. And once I get down here, I kind of do more streaks because it's going to look like clouds in the sky. And then we're going to finish off with our yellow. And our yellow is going to get really bright. So we're going to be using straight yellow. Just a little, not too much. I'm going to use that yellow right down there at that horizon line. And then I can start blending it up into the pink above it to get that really vibrant sunset. Okay. Then we're just going to repeat the process. And usually what I'll have them do is I'll have them just flip their canvas over. And start again. So we're going to start with our brighter yellow. Just a little bit. We're in the sky, or in the water. We're in the sky, we're in the water now. And then we're going to move over into those peachy kind of hues. And kind of into more of a pink. Clean the brush out. Use the clean brush to blend. And then into our purples. What am I doing here? And then just a little bit more dark purple at the bottom. All right. And I can work backwards. Adding more pink if I need to, make it more vibrant. Following up with a little bit of that bright yellow. Kind of streaking that in the water. Okay. And from here, they would be at break time. Just going to deepen up my upper sky a little bit. All right, so they're going to go on break. Letting the canvas dry, and then When they come back, I'm going to start working on their mountainscape. So I usually like to have them use filbert. And I'm going to start my mountains. I want some of this really bright yellow to show up in a few spots. So with these mountains, they need to be careful not to make them too tall. Otherwise, they're going to cover up all of that pretty yellow where the sunset is. So it's really important. Like I said, I think I've shown this before. A lot of times when I want them to keep their mountains really on the smaller side, I have them do a wider, thicker line. We're just going to put that in like a brush width almost. But then I'll tell them, okay, so our mountains aren't going to be a whole lot taller than what we've got happening here. We're just going to bring out a few peaks because we want to leave some of that bright yellow showing. So I just have them come just barely out of the top of that line and bring in a few little peaks. And then that way it makes it look like a mountain range way off in the distance. And they get that nice bright yellow coming across the tops. Okay, so they're going to do those, and then we're going to add in some of these little rocky hill areas that are going to form this little bay. And you can have them use chalk if you would like to sketch those in. I'm just going to paint mine in because I don't have chalk. But what I'll usually do is have them come down, I don't know, a couple of inches, leaving a little space in between the mountain. And I have them come in and bring the base, kind of forming the little hill here. And they can make them bumpy, like little rocks, because Tahoe's very rocky. Like so. Okay, so I'm from the top of it. Like this can even come up higher. Than the mountains behind it. But I like to have them paint that in. So they can kind of get a visual. And once they have this painted in and they can kind of see what it's looking like, then they can come in and just very carefully kind of bring that bottom edge down a little bit to make it look like it's forming that little bay. Okay. All right, and then I'm gonna clean off that brush a little bit. And this paint is still wet, so I'm just gonna take that paint, kind of do some little quick pulling down from the edge. And it's a quick flick down. If they need to grab a little bit of paint, that's fine, but they want to make sure there's not too much on their brush, and they want to start up in the land area and then pull down. Okay. And I pull down further as I move to the edge of the canvas. But this just gives that reflection down in the water. Okay. All right, so once they have that reflection in, then they can clean out filbert. We're gonna use the little round brush to do some of these tiny little rocks that are hanging out here. This brush holds way too much water. All right, so we're just going to come out here and create some little rock shapes. And when they're way out here, they're tiny. And as they move closer to the bottom of the canvas, they're going to get a little bit bigger. I like to layer some of them together. You can have them running off the canvas. Okay. Now, if they're doing great big rocks, I would have them use the filbert to do their bigger rocks. Have them use the little tiny brush for the little tiny rocks. I'm working on a smaller canvas, but you'll be working on a little bit of a bigger canvas. And like I said, if they decide to do big rocks, it's a lot of work for that little brush. All right, so once that is done, then we're going to add a little shadow under some of these rocks. So I'm going to use red, about equal parts of red and blue, to make a really dark, dark, dark purple. And just a tiny touch of black. Okay, I'm not gonna worry too, let's see. Like some of these rocks off in the distance, I'm not gonna get too crazy with those because they're just so far off. Maybe I just come underneath them and just do a little swipe of purple. But as we get closer and the rocks get a little bit bigger, we want to replicate the shape of that rock underneath it. So I'm just kind of copying the shape right underneath the rock. And then while those are drying, I'm going to work on some trees. So I'll pull a few little trees off the top of these little close hills. Okay, and it's always good to have them do their little guidelines. Keep those trees in check. Sometimes I'll have them go ahead and just do the tippy top of the tree while they're using their little round brush. Just down to that first guideline. Just do a couple little swipes. And then they can finish off with fill. I'm gonna make that tree taller. And then the very last thing that they're going to do, a couple things. We're going to do a little highlight on the water. I'm going to do that with a little tiny brush. I'm going to use a very pale, pale yellow. And I've got a pretty, I've got lots of bright showing through, but I think, I want the highlight to come down in the center of the painting here. So just very lightly. I'm going to come in and create the light hitting the water. And then we want to make a little bit of a ripple effect on a couple of the rocks maybe here. So I'm just going to add some white to, they can use pink or they can use purple. Mostly white, just a touch of the color. And they can use that to just a tiny little water break line at the base of the rock. Some of the bigger rocks. And maybe even a couple little water ripples over that shadow. And if they want, they can even come up here into the base of the actual hill. But they want to be careful not to go too cray-cray. And with that, this painting is done. So here's some of the details up close. Okie dokie. All right. Tahoe sunset complete. See y'all later.